elections and voters. And this question uses a quote from Polly Toynbee. Why do people believe class is fading? Because the post-war years did see an exceptional upward surge as a great increase in white-collar and middle management jobs changed a two-thirds working-class society into a two-thirds middle class. Do you agree that this explains the declining political relevance of class?
Okay, well, there are a number of things you probably want to consider in general when attacking this question on class. The first thing to bear in mind is that the question makes a very specific empirical claim, and you're going to want to try and assess that claim. Are Toynbee's numbers right about this? Is her way of sort of summarising the change in the class structure in terms of two very large classes a fair sort of assessment of what's gone on, or is it potentially a little bit oversimplified? You also want to think about the elements of class politics that perhaps that claim leaves out. For example, inequalities in income and wealth, inequalities in mobility don't get mentioned in that quote, but you may want to think about them as well. The second thing you really want to think about with a question like this is what is the mechanism at work here? Toynbee is basically saying that we've gone from a two-thirds working class society to a two-thirds middle class society. That makes class less relevant. But in both of those societies, you have two-thirds of people belonging to one class and one-third belonging to another. Why does one have class as a very relevant part of politics and the other one not have class relevant as politics? What is the political mechanism that leads a middle-class society to be one in which class is a less relevant factor in determining how people make their political choices? The third thing you're probably going to want to think about a little bit here is the politics of the situation. Toynbee is talking about a change in the class structure, but in elections and voters we're thinking a lot about how political parties respond to changes in society, and that hasn't been mentioned in the quote, but can be a very important part of the story of what's going on here. So how do parties respond when the class structure changes, and what effect does that have on the outcomes? Do some parties start to emphasise class more or emphasise class less? Do they change the kind of policy appeals that they make, the kind of ideological approach that they take? What do the parties do when they see these changes happening in society? That's an important part, I think, of a good answer on this question. And the final point to make on this particular question is that the quote assumes something that you don't necessarily have to take for granted. It assumes that the relevance of class has declined. You may want to interrogate whether that's true and the extent to which it's true, and in what senses is it true. Perhaps class divisions have declined in terms of political choices between one party and another. Perhaps new class differences may have opened up, for example, in whether voters choose to turn out at all.